Welcome to another episode of the A to Z of Wine. Everything you want to know about wine, but we're afraid to ask. I'm your host Shehnaz, a fellow wine lover and lover of wine travel. Today we have a very special guest with us, Bartholomew Broadbent of Broadbent Selections, but a lot of you will remember him from Wine Wednesdays. So welcome, Bartholomew.
Thank you
It's
so
so
much.
nice to have you. What is it like to be sitting on the other side?
Oh no, it's great.
Yeah?
I mean, I'm very flattered, but I really enjoyed the Wine Wednesdays because I've made a real connection with some of your viewers, and it's really nice to hear people who've been on a cruise and seen me in their staterooms. And also, some of the viewers have become friends on Facebook, and they comment on my posts and my Facebook, Bartholomew Broadbent, and it's just really fun to have that connection with people. And
it's a really nice way of showing as well how accessible wine can be and wine people can be.
And then when you took over the A to Z of wine, or A to Z as the Americans would say.
Absolutely.
I felt a bit sort of thrown out, but now I realise you haven't taken over Wine Wednesdays.
Absolutely not.
So I can come back and do Wine Wednesdays.
That's yours.
anytime.
You can come back. We can talk about it. But yeah, no, absolutely. So it'd be so nice to sort of show the viewers a little bit more about sort of behind the scenes. Who's the man behind Wine Wednesdays? A bit about you and how your wine journey started.
Yeah, I mean, you're much more interesting. I'm astonished by how much you've travelled. I remember when you said to me, "What's a wine region that surprised you?" And I said Lebanon, and it's exactly the same one that you.
That was exactly what was in. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
We've both been
too.
there, and
Yes.
we've got many sort of paths crossing all the time. But
yes,
but Broadbent Selections. I set that up in 1996. Even though you'll see this Broadbent Madeira has 1954 on it.
That's well before your time.
Yeah, so in that case, in 1996, we discovered people had barrels of wine, which were fantastic. So we bought it and put our own label on it. So we had some older wines. Right.
That's incredible. I suppose it also shows how long something like a Madeira can actually survive.
Oh yeah,
and wine in general
forever.
as well.
Yeah,
yes.
it's forever. It doesn't go off. You
Yeah.
can't. In fact, I tell people that you could keep a bottle of Madeira in your car all summer long in the heat of Virginia with the humidity there, and have a open bottle and then pour it and it'd still be good. And actually, I tested that theory one year. I opened a bottle of 10-year-old Malmsey Broadbent Madeira, took out a couple of glasses, put the cork back on, put it in the boot of my car, and that was in April. And in August, I had a dinner party, and I didn't have any Madeira, or well, at least I didn't want to open the good stuff for the people who were there. So I went to my car, grabbed the bottle, poured it, tasted it, realised it was too warm from the car, so I put ice cubes in it and gave everyone a glass, and everyone's happy, and it was actually delicious. So
that's incredible.
It really is indestructible.
Yeah.
But.
So Malmsey, for anybody that doesn't know much about Madeira, so there's different types of Madeira, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely.
So what are the different sort of
styles? So we should tell people to go back and watch Wine Wednesday's Madeira segment.
Absolutely, we should.
But then they'll get the complete education.
Yes.
But Madeira is a wine that's basically heated through shipping to America, and the different grape varieties, Social, Verde, Bois, Malmsey, and Tinta Negra.
Smells amazing.
Yeah, we'll taste that later.
We will.
Anyway, back to Broadbent Selections.
Yes.
Because that started in 96, and I had, a lot of your viewers from previous episodes of Wine Wednesdays know that I grew up in the wine business. My father was called Michael Broadbent.
The Michael Broadbent, Master of Wine. Did he set up the Wine and Spirits Trust Education, sort of WSET as we know it now?
No, he was the first international president of that. But he started the wine auctions for Christie's in 1966. Okay. And then he wrote for Decanter for 433 consecutive months.
That's incredible.
And then he wrote, you can see all his books down there.
Yes.
He's wrote over 50 books on wine, or either wrote or co-wrote, but there are two important ones. Great Vintage Wine book, which morphed into Vintage Wine and Wine Tasting.
Yes.
But so I grew up in England with him as a father, and when I was younger, I did some jobs, but then I left England when I was 20 to move to Canada, and there I was working for an agent in Canada who represented various wineries, some of which we now represent in my company. And after 4 years in Canada, I got a job with the Symington family, who are in various port houses.
Very famous Symington family, which I do believe we visit as well on our Douro cruise.
Good.
So for example, we do have an excursion that goes to Graham's.
Okay, good.
So the port wine house there in Porto.
Right. So they hired me to start their company in America called Premium Port Wines, and to basically, this was in 1985, to teach Americans about port and then Madeira. And so I was with them for 10 years at Premium Port Wines, and then left. I like to say I reached the glass ceiling, didn't marry one of their daughters, but I left to start my own company, Broadbent Selections. And at first my father complained to my mother, but he said, "That's my name." But my mother said, "Yes, but it's his name too." And so
it's the next generation.
Yeah,
absolutely,
exactly.
Absolutely. But you said you had sort of many jobs leading up to moving to Canada, and one of them was with Stephen Spurrier.
Yeah. Well, first, Stephen Spurrier was when I was still at boarding school. I had a summer job with Stephen Spurrier. I was 17 at the time.
Incredible.
And that was in his wine shop in
Paris.
And for those who recognize the name Stephen Spurrier but can't really remember who he is, he did a tasting which is now known as the Judgment of Paris, where he...
Legendary.
Yeah, it was in, I think it was 1976, and he did a tasting of French wines against California wines, and the California wines beat them, and the French were all shocked and very upset, but it was one of the most historic events in the wine business.
Absolutely, and great for New World wines as well, for people to realise that there is so much more happening outside what we call Old World wine regions, for example.
But he started a wine school in Paris, in Cité Berrier, and it was, he also had a wine shop, and he started a wine school because he realised the French don't know anything about wine.
Contrary to popular belief.
Yeah.
Also, they would have us know.
They know about their regions, but the Bordelais don't really know much about Burgundy, and
which is fascinating.
Gungans don't know about Loire, and so
they're just very sort of thinking about their... Which, there's something to be marvelled about that too, but equally there's so much in France.
Exactly, and at that time, England wasn't producing good wine at that time.
Yes.
They do obviously now. So England became a centre of wine trading. All the wines came, so the English became experts on all the wine regions. So that's why he went to France to start a wine school. And I was there. I arrived in Paris, got my bottle of Pimm's and a suitcase, and he lent me a flat, which I stayed in, and I worked for him. One of my bosses was the guy who started Willie's Wine Bar in Paris.
Oh wow, I've been to that.
Mark Williamson.
That's an incredible wine bar. Definitely one to go to if you are there.
Yeah.
There's many more.
And he's an Englishman. He started off at Stephen Spurrier, or he worked for Stephen Spurrier.
I did not know that.
And they had great fun with me. And this is a bit of a naughty story.
Oh, yes.
So they, one day, well, first of all, whenever his friends who are restaurateurs called and said, our dishwasher hasn't shown up, can you send someone? Of course, I would go and do lunch shifts at the dishwashing in
Great
restaurants.
experience.
Great experience. I can genuinely say I've been a dishwasher in a restaurant, which is good. But one of the other things they did was they once sent me off on a delivery. They had a little hand trolley, and they said, you have to go to this apartment and deliver this wine. So I thought, okay, sure. And they were all snickering. I couldn't understand why they were laughing. And so I got to the building, rang the doorbell, and a woman answered, said, just bring it upstairs in the lift. And so I brought the wine upstairs on a dolly. The door was open, but I had to get a signature. So I said, hello, hello. And she said, come down the corridor, and all in French, of course, and you'll see me. And I walked down the corridor, and there she was in the bathtub, waiting for her regular Englishman to find a 17-year-old Englishman not knowing what to do, appeared, And yeah, I didn't know what to do, so I left.
What did you do? Did you get your signature though?
I can't remember. I don't remember the bubbles.
Gosh, yeah, different kind of bubbles.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was fun. So I worked for Siemens Barrier, and then after school I did a cooking course.
Okay.
Because I was going to live alone in France. And my mother sent me on a cooking course, and then I went to work for Hennessy and Cognac as a tour guide.
Okay.
And gave myself food poisoning.
Crikey.
And I worked for them for a few months. And then I went to the Harrods to work in the wine department over the Christmas season.
What was that like?
Really fun.
Yeah.
Really super fun.
What year would that have been, roughly?
About 1980 or 79.
Yes. And what was it like
79
then?
probably.
What would the wine department in Harrods have been like in the 1980s?
It was not, now it's downstairs. In 1980 we were upstairs.
Okay.
Greatest customer. He came in every day, twice a day, most frequent customer and he was a busker on the tube station. He came in twice a day to buy a bottle of cider. So that was fun.
Classy busker.
Yeah. After Harrods, I went to Australia, did 2 vintages at Rothbury Estate, and then which was Len Evans' property.
And what part of Australia is that?
That's in the Hunter Valley.
And the Hunter Valley, nice.
Yeah, and then I went to the Barossa Valley to do Yalumba,
Yes,
to work there.
I do love the Barossa as
The
well.
Hill Smith family.
Yes.
And then I did sort of a gap year, sort of travelling around Australia. And then my father called and said there's a job opening at Harvey's in London in Pall Mall. So I rushed back and so I worked for them for a couple of years and then got the job offer in Canada when a client called Parry de Winton came in after a boozy club lunch from one of the clubs in St James's. And we had the directors of Allied Breweries in a meeting downstairs, so I had to keep this guy quiet. So I gave him a glass of sherry and shoved him in the cupboard and locked the door. And every 20 minutes I opened the closet and filled up his glass. And after 5 glasses he said, they'd like you in America. And he got me a job in Canada, a job offer. So for 2 years, went for 2 years, and that has
to be the most
40 years.
That has to be the most unusual job interview ever.
Yes. I was so ignorant. I went to the interviews with the Quebec House. And they said, why do you want to move to Quebec? I said, I don't. I want to move to Montreal. I had no idea that Montreal was in Quebec. I was that ignorant. But here we are.
It's incredible. That's quite the story. So even though you grew up in wine, you didn't necessarily have to go into wine, but it's obvious from what you said, you loved it.
No, my parents didn't encourage us at all. In fact, they didn't. My sister, who she was briefly working in the wine trade, but then she went back to law school, and then she's actually pretty impressive. She became the Chief Magistrate Judge of England and Wales, and now she's a High Court judge, and she's married to James Arbuthnot, who, if anyone's heard of the post office scandal, he was the politician who went to bat for the post clubmasters, and he's actually become pretty well known in the past 4 months at the end of his career, which is kind of nice.
Yes.
But my parents didn't encourage us to go into wine. When I eventually said I want to go into the wine business, my father was then very encouraging.
But what was it that really got you inspired or interested or wanted to sort of?
I think in Australia, I travelled around Australia wine regions with Mark Hugel from Hugel in Alsace.
Oh, wow.
And
it's one of my favourite producers in Alsace.
Yeah, they're great.
So, yeah.
And his enthusiasm, and he was taking notes, and his enthusiasm brushed off on me. And I thought, this is good. But I think what I really liked about growing up in the wine business, of course we drank great wine all the time, but what I really liked was my father's diversity of friends, whether it was a duke or a dustman. Everyone had something in common with wine, and people who like wine are usually fun, interesting, intelligent, funny, nice.
I'm going to take all of that, yes.
Yeah.
But if for anyone that's watching this episode and they're considering a career in wine, or their children or grandchildren are considering a career in wine, what would your tips be about starting out? If
you really, really, really enjoy wine, don't go into wine business. It really ruins the
enjoyment of it.
The image of because the wine trade these days is pretty aggressive and cutthroat, and it is a lifestyle. You're going into it for a lifestyle. You're not going into it to get rich. I mean, the famous, especially for building a winery, is how to start with a big fortune and how to make a big fortune in the wine business.
To start a vineyard, you've got to have money before you can make money.
So start.
But you probably lose money.
Start with a big fortune.
Yeah.
If you want to make a fortune in the wine business, start with a big one and then end up with a little one.
Small one, absolutely. No. So thinking about sort of wines that have the memorable wines in your life, what the sort of the ones that you think about, and those could be wines you've drunk or wines that just left an impression on you over
So my father took notes on every wine, and that's became a foundation of his big book. And when I was about 16, we were staying at Château Latour in Bordeaux, and the director of Latour, I can't remember his name offhand, but he gave us the 1865 Château Latour and said, "Young man, this is the first and last time you'll ever drink this wine." So I started writing notes. And I've had it 3 times since. But that was one of the most impactful wines because I figured, okay, I'll take notes on wine. But yeah, there have been lots of other great wines.
And Latour, for anyone that doesn't know, that's left bank or right bank Bordeaux?
It's Pauillac.
So that's left bank.
Yeah, if my wine education serves me correctly, I think that's right.
And to sort of separate as well, I suppose, if you're sort of simplifying it, left bank, there's more of a focus on Cabernet. Right bank's more of a focus on Merlot. You've got different soils, so Merlot is more kind of clay, sandy, and I love my soils. And Cabernet's sort of the more rocky and so
we don't currently sell any Bordeaux, so I'm really rusty on my Bordeaux. But
I think Bordeaux, at the price point, you've really got to work hard, which is why I started looking at Bordeaux from different regions, and that takes me nicely onto one of the bottles we have on this table here. So Lebanon and South Africa actually were the 2 countries I started looking at for incredible Bordeaux blends.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Argentina is another one. So
Chateau Musard, I know that you'll be interviewing Mark Hochar soon, who is from Chateau Musard.
So that'll be another episode, yes.
Yeah. And my parents used to use me as cheap labour in their wine fairs, like Bristol Wine Fair. I'd stand behind the table, they'd be off schmoozing, and I'd be behind their Christie's table. And at the 1979 Bristol Wine Fair, Serge Hochar, who was the owner and winemaker of Chateau Musard,
another wine legend.
Yeah, and the conditions of civil war in Lebanon meant he couldn't sell his wines in Lebanon, so he had to find export markets. So he came to see my father at the Bristol Wine Fair and asked him to taste the wine, and my father was blown away by it and wrote about it as being the discovery of a year and things like that. But I was there with my father, and he said, "Well, you should taste this wine." And I immediately said, "This is the best wine I've ever had." And bear in mind that at home then, our home wines were 1961 Bordeaux, 1945 Bordeaux.
Wow.
So I knew what great wine was, but I immediately said, "This is the best wine I've ever had." And I've always felt that way. It was the only red wine I had at my wedding.
So that was the 1988 Chateau Musard. Allegedly, I don't know. Apparently so. I love it.
I can't even remember which vintage it was.
I think it's just incredible, though. So it was good enough to serve at your wedding. What is it that makes this particular wine so special?
Well, Serge trained in Bordeaux under Émile Peynaud, who's the most famous legendary wine teacher of all time.
Definitely is.
And he went back to Lebanon and made the wine exactly the opposite of how he was taught. So because he wanted his wine to be unique, and if he made it the way he was taught, it tasted like other wines, and it is a unique wine. And you could easily say, "Oh, what's your favourite wine? Chateau Lafite." That's the end of a story. When you say, "What's your favourite wine? Chateau Musard," that's the beginning of a story. So when I started Broadbent Selections, everyone thought, "Oh, he's going to do the classics, Bordeaux, Burgundy, and stuff like that." But in fact, I went to all the emerging regions. So back then, in '96, even New Zealand was fairly new.
It really was.
so
It was in this country as well.
Yeah, I think the first wines were planted in 1985 in New Zealand. But so
Yeah.
we represent Spy Valley, which is one of our favourite wines. And
it's a vineyard I've been to and I highly recommend visiting
Yes.
because they do have such an incredible selection.
Yeah.
My favourite was they did a late harvest Sauvignon Blanc,
yes,
which is, again, so incredibly
It's
unusual.
delicious, yeah.
So good with lemon meringue pie. It's just, yeah.
and they're nice
They don't-
people.
Yeah, they're very nice people, very hospitable.
So when we pick wines for our portfolio,
Yes.
we have about 6 absolutes, and one is that it has to be family owned because
Mm-hmm.
families look after their own interests and we share their interests. If you have a middleman, that middleman is only really looking after his own interests. So family owned is very important. It has to be the best quality wine from the region, either the best vineyard or on par with what's known to be the best wine. It has to be extremely good value for the money, because even if it's a $5 wine or $500 wine compared to its peers, it has to be offering good value. Has to be as naturally made as possible.
So minimal intervention as much as possible.
Yeah, obviously we represent Barbersville in Virginia, and that's a very humid area, so it can't be natural, but they can
Yes.
still do it as naturally as
possible.
is provided by geography and climate. And then a very important one is the wines have to have a story. Each wine has to have a story.
I like that.
And also, the owners or the people behind the winery have to be honest, ethical, fun, and nice, because life's too short with people to work with people you don't like. So all of our wineries are really fun, owned by really fun people. They've got good stories and they're really nice people to work with.
Yes. And I recognise some of these labels. The Vinho Verde under the Broadbent label. What got you making this one? Because this is beautiful. People will recognise it on the ship. The last time I had it, I think I was doing a trip through into the midnight sun, and I just vividly remember sailing through the fjords. It was August, early August, about 24 degrees in Norway. Sun is shining. You're there enjoying the scenery with a chill glass of Broadbent Vinho Verde, and I'll never
Yeah.
forget that moment.
No, it's a delicious wine,
Crisp and just
actually
beautiful.
Again, we were sort of pioneering with this because Vinho Verde in America, where I live, was a category that was, you found it on a bottom shelf. It had been sitting there for a long time. It had basically gone stale because it was cheap and
Yes.
wasn't shipped properly.
Because you buy it fresh, you drink it fresh.
Yeah,
It's
so-
spritzy, it's, yeah.
So you
Minerally.
said, what made you start this wine? And and a lot of people thought I was nuts selling a cheap wine because they all knew me as ports and Madeiras.
And it's quality.
Yeah, and I realized that all you have to do is put it in a refrigerated shipping container to get it to America, and it'll taste as good as it does in Portugal. And I love the fact that this label. So we had label designers coming through, and they were all boring labels.
Yes.
And this flower was a painting sitting on my fridge. It was painted by my niece, Alice, when she was 4 years old. She's now 22, saying, "Hey, where's my?" But I said, all we need is something fun. This is a simple, fun wine. We need something simple and fun like that. And I pointed to the picture, and we decided to use it, and we put the blue background.
Yes.
But it's been a phenomenal success. There are companies who use this as an example of a great label. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I
whether-
feel like I've dressed to actually match this
You
wine.
have indeed.
You know, unknowingly, but you know, I like to pretend every day is spring. So,
Yes.
but yeah, no, it's a really beautiful wine. I think people shouldn't be deterred by screw caps, for example. There's a
Yeah,
reason why they're there,
absolutely.
and the snobbery around, you know, sort of screw caps as well. There's really no need because it's a beautiful wine itself. The other one on this table that really caught my eye is this beautiful one. So it says Architect. It's from Alexandra Valley in Sonoma, Cabernet Sauvignon. Tell us a little bit about this particular label as we're talking about labels.
So before my father joined the wine business, he trains as an architect, and he was. He likes to say that he decided not to pursue architecture when he was sitting an exam talking about plumbing, and he thought, "This is beneath me." Literally. So he left and went into the wine business. so he became. He was in
wine
the wine.
auctioneer.
He did other stuff in the wine
Yes.
business before starting the auctions for
Okay.
Christie's. So we have two labels which we basically did in sort of memory of him.
Mm-hmm.
One is called Auctioneer, and this little drawing was done by my father. It's one of his Christmas cards, actually.
Yes.
So we did this from Napa Valley, and then this one is called Architect in memory of that. And the drawing, we made this gold. It was all just pencil drawing. He's a prolific artist. If you go to my Facebook, Bartholomew Broadbent, go to photos and then albums, you'll see Michael Broadbent's art, and we've got about 600 of his drawings. But he was most proud of this, of all his drawings. This was one he was most proud of. And the fact that it's completely hand-drawn is...
No AutoCAD, no design programs.
No computers back then. This was when he was 20 years old or something.
Yes.
So it's an Alexander Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, and both of those two wines are made in a style that he would like.
And describe that style.
Well, the trouble with some Napa cabs have become very intense, very concentrated, very over-extracted, sweet and high alcohol. There are other great cabs in Napa, but some are like that, and he didn't like those at all. So we're making more elegant, refined wines.
Better balance,
better
more restrained, better
more
acidity,
yes.
not overripe fruit. I think those are great tips as well for how to pick a good cab from the US.
Yeah, because high alcohol doesn't, high alcohol is a disaster with food. And unless it's port with Stilton.
True. And even then, port has beautiful acidity, which sort of balances everything out, which is super important to remember. So we then have, and English wine is very, very close to my heart. The earlier episodes of the A to Z of wine have really concentrated on the different regions of English wine. And so now we have Gusbourne, and some of you may have seen Gusbourne served on the ship as well.
Yes.
This is the Blanc de Blanc. This is actually my favourite that you probably didn't know. But so tell us about how the partnership with Gusbourne starts as well, and anything else about English wine that you would like to share.
Yeah, so I am I'm not a partner, I'm an investor, and my brother-in-law is an investor. So it's a family thing.
Again, yes.
We don't own it, we're just investors.
Yes.
But my father was actually making wine in the 60s in Beaulieu, and back then England didn't have the climate to make wine. No. Today, England has the climate. It's the same soil that you have in Champagne in Reims.
It does, yes.
The chalk that pops out of the White Cliffs of Dover spreads across southern England, mixed with other sort of gravelly soils and limestone soils that we have in England. And so England now, sadly, with climate change, has got a climate that's suited to making great wine. They make great Pinot Noirs, great Chardonnays. This is a classic Champagne blend, so it's Pinot Meunier, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay. Obviously, this Blanc de Blanc is all Chardonnay.
It's all Chardonnay,
100%
exactly.
Chardonnay.
They do, they have a beautiful range, because I also noticed they're starting to make 100% Meunier as well, which is another grape that, really excites me.
Yeah.
But so Gusbourne's based in Kent. They have a really nice program as well to visit. And they were inspired by New World Wine Tourism. So the owner, I believe, is from South Africa, if I'm correct.
One of.
And so he's, of course, brought in lots of different sort of parts of wine tourism, which I think is really exciting to have in England, and for us to sort of really, champion that a lot more. But super exciting.
No, I think, to me, I started a hashtag at Better Than Champagne.
Yes. There's so many versions though, aren't they?
Yeah,
so
it is, but English sparkling wine is fantastic. If you're celebrating something on the ship and you want the best, I would say Gusbourne.
Definitely, We have some colleagues as well who in the past unknowingly have ordered what they thought was champagne. Turns out it was English wine, and they much preferred it. Drank the bar dry, and then all that was left was champagne.
Yeah.
I do like champagne. nothing against it.
Exactly.
But English sparkling wine is really pretty special. And it's only getting better and better, isn't it?
Yeah,
as we're learning more, because it's all about experience. It's having past vintages to see how well they age as well.
Yeah.
Sort of, this gets nerdy, but sort of grape clonal selection as well, to find what's right for our terroir, for our climate, for our soils as well.
Yeah,
so I think
exactly.
there's a lot of work in there. And the bottle I also wanted to pick up, and this isn't part of your portfolio, but it is part of your portfolio.
Yeah, so Broadbent Selections represents about 45 wineries.
That's incredible.
The ones here,
Yes.
Chateau Musard is one of the ones we represent.
Yes.
The other ones on the table
Yes.
are ones we own or make under our own names. But so this is part of our portfolio. We don't own it.
Okay. But I suppose what made the question that I wanted to ask is, what does someone who works in wine drink as, what do you drink every day? So tell us a bit more about this bottle.
So going back a few years, my wife only drank red wines. Didn't want white wines at all until one day I brought home a bottle of Spy Valley Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh.
And she loved it so much, she switched and she only drank Spy Valley Sauvignon Blanc. Until a couple of years ago, we actually had a period of 3 months because of a short vintage and shipping issues. We ran out of Spy Valley and I had to offer her some de Vetsoff Limestone Hill Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. And she had been a ABC person.
And anything but Chardonnay.
Exactly.
Which is what we were going to call these episodes to start with, and then we switched to the A to Z of wine.
That's better, yeah. You'd annoy a lot of Chardonnay producers.
I do love Chardonnay, though.
But the thing is that the reason people don't like Chardonnay is because they get exposed to these oaky, cloying, sweet, commercial wines, which are horrible.
Sort of high volume, they're using oak
tons
chips
of additives and headache inducing.
This is a celebration of the fruit, which is what wine should be.
So this is pure Chardonnay. This is what Chardonnay should taste like. And so she drank it, and now it's a dilemma. Does she drink the Spy Valley? Does she drink the de Vetsoff Chardonnay? Limestone Hill? She drinks both. So these are the two white wines we have at home all the time, Spy Valley and de Vetsoff. And the interesting thing about this family is they were the first family to make Chardonnay in South Africa, and their cuttings came from Drouhin's Clos des Mouches in
Burgundy.
In Beaune. So they smuggled in a suitcase initially, and eventually they got permission, but they were already growing it by then. And they're the best producers of Chardonnay in the country.
And whereabouts in South Africa are they?
They are in Robertson, which is a bit off the
map?
beaten track. If you go to Cape Town, most of the vineyards, Swartland, Paarl,
Stellenbosch, Franschhoek, so those are the ones
they're
I've been
all
to.
Close
Clustered around,
yes. So this is a bit more of a trek. You have to go over the mountains where you see lots of baboons, so it's fun. But it's in the Robertson Valley where they make a lot of the sparkling wines.
I see. So the Cap Classique, as they would call traditional method in South Africa.
Exactly.
Okay. And what does it? What kind of is this? Is this oaked? Is it unoaked?
Unoaked. So it's pure Chardonnay. It's what Chardonnay
what
should taste
flavors
like.
would we have? I mean, what would it remind people of?
Really, very similar to Sauvignon Blanc, but without the. A lot of people don't like some New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs because of that sort of really
tropical
extreme
characters.
lime cordial.
So maybe more kind of Chablis-esque, where there's more minerally. Sancerre.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Stuff like that. Well,
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
That's
so Spy Valley Sauvignon Blanc is also very Sancerre-ish
It's beautiful.
but it's funny to talk about Spy Valley Sauvignon Blanc and a Chardonnay as being similar in character, but they are.
Yeah, because there's so many different expressions, aren't they? Which is why, ironically, we wanted to use anything but Chardonnay to actually get people to appreciate there's so many different styles. I mean, just on this table alone, we've got a sparkling wine, which is 100% Chardonnay, and a very different expression of a still wine. So, shall we taste some wine?
Oh, what a good idea.
Yes?
I think so, yeah.
Yes? What should we start with?
Well, I've got a bunch of glasses and
and
we're gonna pour a little bit for the Viking crew as well, of course. But,
Absolutely.
well, let's start with the Vinho Verde.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
So Vinho Verde, what grapes are we looking at here, and
Don't
what
ask
region?
me that sort of question. It's,
Vinho Verde. So
no, it's 3 grape varieties,
Yes.
Traditura, whatever they are. But the point about Vinho Verde is it has a little bit of CO2, so it's a little bit spritzy. Yes.
But I think that's quite a nice palate cleanser. So typically this is growing in 5 different regions of the Douro, near Porto.
Well, it's not in Madeira.
It's towards the
when
end,
you're
yeah.
in the Porto and you take the train to the Douro, you actually take the train through the Vinho Verde region. But it's a massive region.
It is huge.
And they make a lot of wines. But a lot of different types of wine come from Vinho Verde. Really, there's Vinho Verde and then there's Vinho Verde from the Vinho Verde region. Because the traditional Vinho Verde, which ours is by law has to be under 11% alcohol. Ours is 9%.
Great wine for lunchtime,
Has a little bit of spritz added.
Yes.
You don't put the grape varieties on the label. You don't have a vintage because you bottle it throughout the year and it's continuous. And it's delicious, and it's not expensive.
No.
But then there are other wines from a region. So if you see a Vinho Verde that is above 12% alcohol, 11% alcohol, has grape varieties, doesn't have spritz, that's just a regular wine, regular table wine from Vinho Verde. So for me, Vinho Verde represents this type of wine.
Yes. Tell us why it's delicious.
It's a low alcohol,
Yes.
it's a lightness, it's a spritziness, it's a refreshingness, it's the deliciousness.
Yes.
How it's made, it's like any other wine. We crush the grapes, we ferment them, we add a little bit of CO2 at the bottling. It's sort of
stainless steel, nice, light and fresh.
Yes, stainless steel. No,
which I think is important because it's
important,
helping the grapes sing really, and you're not masking the flavors, and it's all about that particular.
And another thing that people find fascinating is alcohol.
Yes.
Because they don't know the importance of alcohol.
Incredibly important for balance. Yeah.
Yes, but balance with the brain.
Yes.
Because we've been drinking wine for 10,000 years.
Yes.
And our brains are balanced with wine. And wine, the oldest wine I had was carbon dated to 1670. And it was 6% alcohol. Wow. It was a white wine. And
where was it from? I'm intrigued.
The Canary Islands or Madeira, we're not entirely sure.
Okay.
But if you drink an entire bottle of wine that's 15% alcohol.
Bartholomew, I'm a lady. That would not be happening.
No, and I drink a wine that is 12% alcohol.
Yes.
In an entire bottle of wine
each.
The difference in alcohol content that you had over me at 15% over 12% is the equivalent to 3.5 vodka tonics. Wow. So would you drink a bottle of wine and then say to your mates, hey, I want 3 vodka tonics? They'd think you're absolutely nuts. That's what you did if you drank 15% alcohol wine. Or if you drink 2 4-ounce glasses, this is in America, if you drink 2 4-ounce glasses of wine that's 12% alcohol, you're under the drink drive limit. If you drink 2 4-ounce glasses of 14%, you're over the drink drive limit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the limits in England.
Where's zero alcohol, zero tolerance in the UK?
England?
Yes.
Zero.
Started in Scotland, moved to England. So, yeah.
That's pretty tough.
That is pretty tough. But probably a good thing.
It means you can't have a meal and get in a car.
No. Talking about meals, food and wine. I love to talk about food and wine. What would you pair this Broadbent Vinho Verde with?
Someone once wrote, this is the best wine to go with the Caesar salad.
I think it's a great salad wine.
But,
I absolutely agree with you.
But it's an all-day, everyday wine. It's just a sit down by yourself, drink it on its own or with oysters or something like that.
Because it has that sort of, I would describe it as salinity. It just reminds you of the sea.
Yeah.
It reminds you of something nice and green and fresh where the salad comes in. Be nice with something, I don't know, protein like chicken or a creamy sauce on that salad. So Caesar salad's
and I know people who've used this at weddings because they didn't want to spend the money on champagne. And this has that little bit of spritz.
Celebration spritz. Yeah, I like that. What should we move on to next? What would you like to try?
Well, you want to taste a red wine?
I would love to taste red wine. What should we pick? Architect?
Architect.
So that's a 2021 Alexander Valley, Sonoma County. So tell us the difference between where Sonoma County is versus Napa Valley. My US geography is not that great.
So if you go out of San Francisco north up the coast, on the coast basically is Sonoma,
Yes.
and inland there's a mountain range, and Napa Valley is in between those.
And Alexander Valley is sort of slight altitude as well, isn't it? So you are sort of growing a cross-section of different grapes. And
Yes, although we also have in Napa Valley, the grapes for our auctioneer reserve come from Howell Mountain, which is mountainous in Napa
Even
as well.
higher,
But there's also plains. Using this rather nice corkscrew that my sister gave me.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
I remember traveling to Greece where they had a corkscrew museum. I think it was Garavassiliou, which is near Thessaloniki. And the owner there obviously really, really loved collecting old sort of corkscrews and old wine memorabilia. It was a fascinating place. But, yeah.
Actually, my father's probably got a few old corkscrews lying around, but this is the only one I found.
I think it's Gable there as well, which is brilliant.
The gavel,
Yeah. So,
well,
we're
we'll
gonna
pour this
need a
one for you.
different- So this is beautiful.
How would you describe it?
How would I describe it? It's just transporting me, I don't know, almost semi-autumnal. I wonder, would you ever lightly chill this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that would make it
remember
even sort of...
room temperature was a concept in Scottish castles in the 1500s where it was freezing cold. So room temperature should be a little bit cool.
Do you know, I know this is the wrong region, but for me it's taken me to Australia. And I'm sort of thinking of eucalyptus.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of remembering the hills of sort of Barossa, McLaren, and that sunshine, and it's got something else about it though. That's really, really nice. I really love that. And I'm not saying it for camera. It's beautiful. The fruit, and it's really elegant. It's not a heavy Cabernet Sauvignon. So.
Exactly, and it's only $25 a bottle, which is not expensive for a
probably
California.
the equivalent of about £20 or something for a quality wine.
In fact, I brought over a case. Some chap tasted this wine at Vinho, Verde, a restaurant in the DC airport, and said, "Hey, where can I buy your wine in England?" I said, "Sorry, you can't." But I brought over a case for him.
That's very kind of you. And so, how would you describe this? As this is your wine.
It's a really good food wine. It goes with, because it's not over intense or concentrated.
Really nice.
It's very versatile.
Tannins are so smooth.
Yeah, and it goes with, what would you serve this? I'd serve it with steak. Yes, lamb, yes. Even pastas, pizzas, anything like that.
And if you're vegetarian, I think a nice sort of veggie pasta would be beautiful. Pizza, definitely.
Are you vegetarian?
I'm not vegetarian. I'm just I'm thinking of a juicy steak for sure. There's fries, bit of béarnaise sauce. This would definitely be my wine of choice. Or even Malbec lovers, because I think this has got more elegance.
Yeah.
It would be beautiful for anyone that does like a nice, a bigger red. It has shoulders, but it's got elegant shoulders, if that makes sense, because sometimes people say it can be quite a punchy wine, but it's got the depth and the breadth.
Are you talking about the flavour profile? Or the bottle? I was looking at the bottle.
The bottle as well, though.
Yeah,
it is more elegant, even the bottle, because if you compare it to the auctioneer, this
very
is
different.
more elegant. Yeah, exactly.
And that's more of a classic sort of,
Bordeaux versus that, which
but also,
I've only just realised.
Something with this, which I'm very concerned about, is lightweight, because something
True.
I like wines to be organic. I like wines to be naturally made, but also for the environment, lightweight. So with the Vinho Verde, where we're shipping 70,000 cases to the US.
Yes, that's
we're
quite
shipping
a lot.
it to England, to China. So we've actually gone to a very light bottle with the Vinho Verde. It's a decision we made.
Yeah.
And
you raised a really interesting point just now. You're a pioneer in so many different ways. You brought port and Madeira to the US, but I was also reading you actually at some point even started a winery in China. So you were sort of involved at some point in...
Yeah, we had a
making
winery called Dragon's Hollow. You can't actually own the land because of the Chinese government, so you lease the land, and you have we had 5 women winemakers, and it got us a lot of publicity, and it was really fun to go there. But it was a difficult, it was an inconsistent quality. So we, in the end, I sold it back to. I was a 50% owner, and I sold my half back to the founder, who'd given me 50%. To market.
How did that come about, though? Because again, people are talking about Chinese wine now, but this was a couple of decades ago, was it not?
Yeah. So I was invited to be a speaker at the first China Wine Expo, and when I went there, I thought, oh, I'll go and look for an importer of my wines into China, and then I will maybe look for wines in China. But a woman called Nina Henderson had had an informational interview with us, and she had actually lived in China and spoke Chinese. I didn't need to hire anyone, but I went back to her and said, "Hey, I'll give you the job if you can come to China with me and translate." And then so we actually interviewed all the importers because she'd been in the wine business in China, and so we actually found an importer in China. So they now sell our Vinho Verde and our Madeira.
Fantastic.
And then her father had started a packaging company in China, and he had just started started Dragon's Hollow.
Ah, okay.
And so he asked me if I could bring it into the US and offered me a 50% share.
How interesting.
So it's just bizarre.
Yeah.
I wish we still had it. We were just way before our time because today they're making better wines there. But it was one of the problems we found was that the Chinese culture find it very hard to say no. They just want to say yes. So I had actually Spy Valley's winemaker. We flew him out to China to be our consulting winemaker during harvest.
So that's Spy Valley in New Zealand in Marlborough.
And so he came out, and Mackenzie, I think his name was, and we'd go off to lunch, and he'd say to the 5 women winemakers, whilst we're going at lunch, can you do this to this barrel, this to this barrel, this to this tank, this? And they'd say, yes, yes, yes. We'd go off to lunch, we'd come back, and they hadn't done anything, but they just didn't know how to say no.
I don't know.
Or I don't know, yeah.
Yes.
So the first vintage was pretty good actually, but then
what kind of grapes were you growing?
We're growing mostly Cabernet and Merlot, and did make a white wine. I can't remember, Chardonnay or something. But,
yeah, because they do make some. I tried some incredible Chinese Chardonnay at One Paris a couple of weeks ago, and it was absolutely stunning. So really, really surprised.
The really fun bit about China is in Ningxia province, which is a Muslim area, and close to the Great Wall of China. But the Great Wall of China and that part of it is just a crumbled sort of stack of earth. But, but it was really fun to be. They must have only seen about 3 white people in their lives because.
It's so isolated,
everyone would
isn't it?
stare at us and follow us in the streets. It was really fun. Loved it.
Many celebrities. I think we should also try the Broadbent Madeira.
Absolutely.
Madeira is a region I don't know that much about, so it'd be really nice to sort of teach me and teach our audience.
Have you not been to Madeira?
I have not been to Madeira yet.
The most beautiful place in the world.
So I hear. It's like a tropical paradise, isn't it?
It's like a Hawaiian island in a way. It's never too hot, never too cold. It's windy. But it's the second highest cliff in the world, and many, many, many almost equally high cliffs. And so when people go to Madeira, I say, okay, they say, I want to go and see the vineyards in Madeira and the wineries. I said, look, go for a week, spend half a morning or a morning seeing wineries, and the rest of the week see around the island.
Yes.
There's so much to do. I've been there probably 25 times.
Yes.
And each time I go, they show me something stunning that I've never seen before. And I think, how can I have been here 25 times, sometimes for a week or two at a time?
Yes.
And I haven't seen this most beautiful place in the world.
Yes.
And so it's a...
And they do have a microclimate, don't they? Which is what helps make this unusual wine.
Yes.
So,
this...
so this is a 1954.
Pour some for the crew because...
Yes. Absolutely.
This is a 1954.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so if anybody asks me, this is going to be the oldest wine that I've ever tried.
Really?
So you've got, yes.
No.
Yes, Broadbent, Madeira, Verdejo, 1954. So is Verdejo the grape?
Yeah, so there are about 4 white grapes and 3 red grapes on the
Okay.
island. Social, Verde, Boal, Malmsey, red grapes. And then, the white grapes, I apologize, white grapes. And the red grapes are Triunfo Complexa and Tinta Negra. Tinta Negra being the most important grape. 70-80% of all wine on the island is made by Tinta Negra. But the Social, Verde, Boal and Malmsey, the 4 white grapes, are also the names of the styles.
Yes.
So Social is always dry. Verde always medium dry, Boal medium sweet, and Malmsey is sweet. So if you go into a restaurant in Funchal, in the capital of Madeira, and say, I'd like a Social Madeira, they might actually bring you a wine made out of Tinta Negra, not even a Social, because Social just means dry Madeira for them. It's synonymous.
That's a good
name of grape, but
Yes.
also a style. And you alternate, the sweetness levels of wines are controlled in 2 ways. Altitudes, so the really sweet ones are grown at sea level where it's much hotter. The Socials pretty high up where it's more acidic style and drier, less sweetness.
Yes.
But also you can, with Madeira, just like port, you add a little bit of brandy to it to stop the fermentation when there's some residual sugar from the grapes. So depending on when you add that, you control the sweetness level as well.
That's a great explanation. Cheers. How do you say cheers in Portuguese?
No
Salut.
idea. No idea. I don't. I think I know 3 words in Portugal. Please, thank you.
That's beautiful nose again. How would you describe it? I'd say
Well,
inviting.
it's interesting. This wine, the flavor on this wine is, to me, the flavor of a very old wine. That's what old wine tastes like. You can taste the age, which is a strange thing to say. But.
How is it maintained its acidity so beautifully?
And this bottle
it tastes quite fresh.
is almost empty. It's probably been open for 15 years. I have no idea. Certainly,
wow. Okay.
who knows how long, and it's still great. It's indestructible. It lives forever.
It's
But
actually really beautiful.
But there are a couple of things really great about Madeira. One is the hallmark of great Madeira is the acidity, a very high acidity, and having the acidity very high means you can put it with almost anything, no matter how
Fruit
citrus.
mashes,
I mean, even balsamic vinegar won't kill it.
No.
And then it's a sweet wine, but it has a dry finish. Which means you can put it with puddings or desserts, whatever you call them. And with a late harvest Riesling or a Sauterne, the sweetness of the sugar clashes with the sweetness of the pud. So it kills the wine. But because this already finishes dry, it doesn't clash. So the perfect dessert wine on the ship is Madeira. Just have a glass of Madeira with your pudding and...
You learn to hear. Yeah. That's a really nice way to finish a meal, I think, or even as a sort of
and
a post meal.
Take it off to your cabin and have another glass there.
There we go. I would cheers to that.
The stateroom, I should say.
Stateroom. Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, of course, on the ships too. One of the Wine Wednesdays features was with Alessandra Bindi Segardi.
Oh yes,
beautiful
Tuscan
woman from Tuscan,
wine?
from Chianti Classico. And you can have their wines on the ship. And also another Wine Wednesday episode was with Amanda Johnson from Spy Valley Winery. And those are on your ships, the Viking ships.
Yes.
as well as the Vinho Verde and the Madeira
So
and
if
the
they're
Gusborne.
looking for the Bindi Sicardi, it would be the Chianti Classicos, so it's Sangiovese, beautiful red wines,
Yes.
really elegant,
Yes,
great food wines again.
perfect for
Yeah.
and
And with the Spy Valley, is it the Sauvignon Blanc?
Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
Yeah,
Lovely
So,
again.
and that's a
Yeah.
delicious wine
That's
to
good
drink by itself as well, or
Yeah.
with.
Used to be available in the UK as well. That's how I
Yes,
learnt about
still
it.
is,
So yeah,
still
I
is,
imagine
yes.
if you are watching this in the UK, do look out for it.
Yeah.
If you're watching in the US, Bartholomew, I hope you're supplying it so people can find
Yeah.
it too.
Unfortunately, the Vinho Verde
Yes.
is available in the UK.
Yes.
A company called Top Selection in Portsmouth, and
Yes.
currently there's only one person selling our Madeira, and it's a company called Caviste in
Okay.
Hampshire, and they ship.
Yeah.
But Caviste, Mark Bedford's an old friend, and
Yeah.
he has this wine.
Yeah.
But in the US, all of these are readily available.
Yeah. So thinking about wine and the future of wine, and we won't talk about the wine industry, I think the future of wine and getting more people into wine. Where do you see it evolving over the next sort of few years?
We're a little bit worried, to be honest,
Yes.
about the youth who are drinking other drinks at the moment. Beer is suffering,
Yes.
wine is suffering, but the cocktail culture is grown. And I think one of the problems in America, at least, is to buy a glass of wine in a restaurant is very expensive. And when you can have a cocktail for the same price with that much more alcohol, people are opting for that because wine prices restaurants are gouging a bit. And, you can go to a restaurant in Europe and have a beautiful glass of wine for €3.
Yes.
You couldn't get anything truly beautiful for under $12.
Unless we start looking at different regions as well, I suppose. The
Well-
lesser known grapes, the lesser known regions, potentially.
Yeah, but even then, the reason they're making more money on wine at the moment is because labor shortages are a problem. And so restaurants, instead of being open 5 or 6 days a week, are open 3 or 4.
I see.
And so they have to make up the lost revenues of those days. And they're doing that by inflating the price of wine.
So the moral of the story is, guys, please eat out more.
Eat out
Go
more,
out,
yes.
support your local businesses,
Yes.
support your local vineyards, support the wine culture. Because from my memory of when I started drinking wine to now, part of it could be my palate as well, it's just vastly improved. Wine, the quality, the
Yeah,
availability. We're so blessed in this country because you said, the UK became a trade hub for wine.
Yeah.
So we have access to so many different countries and so many different brands.
Yeah.
But it's evolving.
No, when my father became master of wine, we basically had to know the world of wine, and it was Bordeaux, Burgundy, Hock, Port, Madeira,
Yes.
Moselle.
Yes.
and
Or what we call the traditional
yeah,
sort of
basically that was
markets.
it.
Yes.
You could never pass the master of wine exam now because
Hugely complicated.
huge, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there are over 1 million wineries in the world.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's massive, and it's grown all over the place.
Yes. I mean, just in the UK alone, I believe it's just under 300 wineries, over 800 vineyards.
Yeah.
When I tell people that, they're absolutely
Yeah,
shocked.
Virginia,
and it's growing.
Virginia has 300 wineries
Yes.
now.
And where in the US is Virginia, for anyone that is less familiar
Right
with the
underneath
map?
Washington, D.C.
Okay, so we're still kind of East
East Coast, yeah.
Thinking of the other Washington.
Yeah.
Yes, and then further down. Okay.
Yeah, so the great wine regions, I mean, California, Oregon, Washington, and Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
New York is a big wine region, but
The Finger Lakes, yes.
the trouble is it's more of a one grape horse, like
Yes,
it's a Riesling
country,
whereas
for
Virginia has everything. It grows everything
Yes.
very well.
I did try some recently, and I was so impressed. The quality, the passion,
Yeah.
and the grapes as well. They were growing Rhone grapes, so
Yeah.
grapes like Viognier
Everything,
to
yes.
Burgundy, so great Chardonnay and great reds, so
Yeah,
sort of
Petit
more
Verdot,
Bordeaux.
all sorts of
Petit
things.
Verdot, I did have the most
Yeah.
incredible Petit Verdot.
Yeah.
Big fan of that.
We've done
Yes.
tastings, Virginia wines against benchmark wines. We had a Barbersville against a Vietti.
From
Barolo.
Piemonte. I
Yes.
went to Verde last year.
Yeah, and
Stunning Italian
you know,
wine.
and in a blind tasting with about
Yes.
300 people in the room, and show of hands, everyone voted the Barbersville the more impressive Nebbiolo than the Vieti's Barolo. It was quite an eye-opening moment. Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask you, so if we were to sort of, if you were to recommend or suggest sort of 3 regions or 3 grapes that our viewers should look out for, so something that might surprise them they may or may not have tried or come across yet, what would those be from your experience in the industry currently?
A lot of people these days say that they're not into wines from Chile anymore because they become big brands, but there are some wineries like Di Martino who are making spectacular wines, like very similar story to Swartland in South Africa. These pioneering winemakers who've discovered old abandoned vineyards with 100. In Di Martino's case, in Tata, they have 500-year-old vines,
and that's like not far from the desert, is it?
Yeah.
So
I think Di Martino in Chile is making really interesting wines. So Swartland in South Africa, Eben Sadi is probably the greatest South African winemaker.
Okay.
He's very close to Adi Badenhorst too.
Who is, again, incredible winemaker, beautiful wines. We do get them here too.
Yes.
So, A.A. Badenhorst.
And he makes a brand which we own called the Curator.
Okay. And one more region?
Well, Bekaa Valley.
Bekaa Valley
but we
in
mentioned that.
Lebanon,
We mentioned that
absolutely.
at some point earlier today.
Yes,
and yeah, so I know you've been there.
Beautiful.
It's stunning
and
country.
it's almost like it's close to the cradle of wine because it is...
It's a birthplace of wine.
Exactly, Baalbek. You've got the Temple of Bacchus, so 2 of the oldest surviving temples. The Temple of Jupiter it got hit by an earthquake, but the Temple of Bacchus is absolutely beautiful.
So the Romans built the Temple of Bacchus, not in Italy, but in Bekaa Valley, because that's where they made the best wine. And really, when England and America were really learning about wine on a mass scale, we were all learning about Bordeaux, Burgundy, other stuff. But that was in the 60s, 70s, when the Bekaa Valley was in war-torn, so they really couldn't get on that bandwagon. So we don't know about, although Chateau Musard is a household name in England and is
US.
extremely iconic wine for the American market. In fact, it's probably the most important winery we represent in a way.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Bartholomew.
Thank you, Shehnaz.
Cheers.
Really fantastic.
Cheers.
Fun.
Yeah.